Alright, this is my video 3 for the Centipede final sprint submission. I'll be taking a look at the wave system, as well as the score and HighScore inside the game, and the HUD, looking at both the text writing and the blocking text in the menu. Starting out with the wave system, inside the game file we have the wave data text, which just has this template here up at the top. Starting here, which just has a list of the data in the order that it goes. I tried getting it to write to read the token values assigned beforehand, but it wasn't working, so it's mostly based on the order that you write the data in, which is what this template is for, to show which order the values go in. The dash key signifies the start of a wave data and then the end, and then the tilde just indicates any line that is to be skipped. And then the waves are read in the order that they're written, so whatever order you put the waves in will be what they are inside the wave manager. But if we look in the wave manager, whenever game starts, the initialize for the wave manager will be called, and we'll run through and we will create wave data structs inside of an array, and the amount will always be the total number of waves. And then once we do that, we will call read wave data, and read wave data will load and open up the wave data text and then run through one line at a time, looking for the key that indicates the start of a wave. And once we've found a wave, we'll jump down here and we will read through, setting all the values within the wave data array. And then as soon as we find the key again, then we're outside of the wave and we'll reset. And then once we're done, we'll load through and we'll set all the values within the wave, and then we'll close the file. But then something like the managers can then, or if you look at the wave data, it has all these values that are then stored in this data array, and the positions that are these keys. So then the managers, when setting data, can grab the current wave data structure and then set their values equal to the proper key values inside that array. But then if we look at the score and the HighScore, the HighScore values are tracked by the score manager. So inside score manager, we have the HighScore as well as the HighScore initials, and then the player initials, which are just the initials used for the player inside the list of HighScores, and then a list of HighScores and the initials for those HighScores. And then last score is just used to save the score you just had when you return to attractor mode. So if we look in the HighScore, all these values are set when the instance of score manager is created, including all the defaults for HighScores and the list of HighScores and initials. And so anytime we get a game over, we will call HighScore and the score manager, passing in the player's score, and if it's higher than the HighScore, we'll end up setting that to the HighScore, and we'll set the HighScore initials to the player initials. And then otherwise we'll call HighScore list, and HighScore list will just look through the list of HighScores and find the proper place for that HighScore in the list if it does fit. And then if it does find a spot, it will then call HighScore list again, which will basically run the same loop, but with the score you just replaced, which then shifts all the scores down. Currently it will insert and shift down the scores, but it does not do the same for the initials. It will only set the player initials, and then the other ones will stay the same. But you can call to get HighScore function as well as get the HighScore initials. These are used by the HUD when printing out values. And then you can get last score, which is just used for printing out the previous score on the attractor mode. But if we come and look at the HUD has various functions for the menu initialize and player one initialize, and then there's a life update and a update score for player one. And then we have 3 different draw functions. Only glyph draw and block glyph draw are used. They are just functions used for the text writing of the glyphs. If we look in here, block glyph draw is essentially the same as glyph draw, except it will take in a grid position, which is used for spawning blocks, which are basically invisible mushrooms in the grid, which those are used to cause blocking for the glyphs. But you pass in the grid position, which is what that value is for. And this is the private player one update score and the private player one life update, which will take in values. And these are called by the game manager. And then we have the menu initialize, which will spawn the text for player one, player two, the top score, which will grab HighScore from score manager, and then HighScores, which will print out HighScores at the top, and then we'll print out the HighScore and the HighScore initials, and then run through the HighScore list, spawning each of those values on the screen. It'll run through all of the HighScores till we get to the bottom, and then we will print the 2 miscellaneous texts underneath those, which are also block glyph draws, and then we will spawn the copyright at the very bottom. And then the player one initialize is a bit more simple, and it will just spawn a 0-0 player one score, and we'll just spawn the HighScore in the middle. I don't know why this is player two. And then just the draw function that will draw the glyphs. The HUD had to be a game object so that the draw would work, and that is why the terminate uses HUD instance marked for destroy. But if we launch this, we can see all of the HUD being drawn. We can see that when the centipede hits the text, he'll bounce off. And then if the player's bullet hits the text, the blocks have collision with the bullet, and so it will be destroyed against blocking. But if we launch into player one mode, I have updated values for some scores that'll make it easier to get a high score. You see now I have a new high score, so if I force a game over, I'll return back to attractor mode, and the last score still shows up on the left side as it does in the game, and then the high score shows up in the top score spot, and then the new high score fills in at the top of the list. But if I get a high score that is not the top high score, but it makes on the list, it will be inserted in the correct spot. If I force the game over now, my new HighScore was inserted into the list, and the scores below that were shifted down, and the bottomless score was removed from the list.